I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris, joined by my buddy Andrew Hutchinson, bestofarkansassports.com. Andrew has been a frequent guest on this program lately because the program he covers manages to stay in the news. That's not always for good reasons when your program's in the news a lot these days, Hutch, but when you're Arkansas, it is. And the Razorbacks, to put it mildly, have been on a heater lately, having swept South Carolina, took, 2 or 3 last weekend. But, man, in a league where pitching has been hard to come by, you saw LSU lose a game this weekend. It threw 9 guys in a game 3 against Mississippi State. None of them pitched well. And here's Arkansas out here with with an injury-ravaged pitching staff that got through the weekend and gets a really great hitting South Carolina team using 5 arms. How do we explain this?
That's just Dave Van Horn working his magic. And I think you got to give Matt Hobbs, the pitching coach, a lot of credit. That's a guy that, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, some of the fan base was ready to fire him, as they are. But lo and behold, they've gotten it all together. Dave Van Horn told us before the season that he thought this was the deepest pitching staff he's ever had. And I think we finally are seeing that is true because, as you said, they have just been absolutely ravaged by injuries. Now 3 different guys down with season-ending injuries. You've still got Brady Tygart kind of slowly working his way back after missing about 2 months of the season. It's remarkable what they've been able to do. The guy that they just had a guy, Hunter Hollan, throw a complete game on Sunday in a rubber match against South Carolina. And he's a guy that has been battling a leg injury and is still battling the leg injury. And yet all he does is go out there and throws a complete game, allowing 1 run against, as you said, a really good offensive team in South Carolina. So what they've done with this pitching staff has been nothing short of remarkable.
Well, and I know it's not just been limited to pitching. You've had Peyton Stovall hurt at times. I think he's been back a little bit. Am I correct on that?
No, he's missed the last 2 weekends. He had been dealing with a shoulder injury for several weeks, and it's
that's right. He didn't play last weekend.
Yeah, he didn't play the last 2 weekends, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure if he's going to play again this year.
Oh my! Am I dreaming? Didn't he come back from injury and then kind of got sidelined again, or am I confusing him with one of the 900 other injured players on the roster?
There's a good chance you may be confusing him, but this isn't something that just came out of nowhere. It's been a nagging thing that led him to miss, some midweek games and things like that, and something that Dave Van Horn's talked about. And I think it's affected his play. I mean, he's only hitting like 270 or something like that this year. Not quite what we've all expected him to hit. And I think it's that injury that's been bothering him. They haven't come out and said anything yet. We do get to talk to Dave Van Horn later today, based on where we're recording this on Wednesday morning. And maybe we get an update, but I don't get good vibes in terms of just kind of the status of that injury.
Well, they got Tavian Josenberger back. Maybe that's where I'm getting mixed up. I've got box scores in front of me. You would think I'd be bright enough to read them as I'm doing this, but sometimes the mind slips. And to be clear, I mean, this is hard enough to follow if you're on the beat. If you're covering 14 teams, they're really hard to follow from afar in terms of who's back, who's kind of back, who might be back, who's out. I mean, it has been – look, Dave Van Horn, if they had a full deck, would have done an outstanding coaching job and probably would have been worthy of Coach of the Year anyway. And I feel like we've talked about this endlessly, but it is a continual topic with this program. It's unbelievable what he has done. And they are now sole possession of the SEC entering the weekend, and I think we'll leave it is the overall champion for reasons I'll get into in a bit as we talk about the Vandy series. But it's just been it's been because you and I text and talk privately off air and kind of compare notes and things. And every week I feel like I get a midweek update from you of my words, not yours. The wheels are falling off. Another guy got hurt today. It's the discussion is dodgy when this guy comes up or that guy comes up. So it amazes. And I think that's one reason I've been hesitant to elevate Arkansas in our power rankings every week. I'm just like, it felt like the minute I would put them up at the top, the wheels were going to come off and I'd look dumb the next week. But it hasn't happened that way.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, there was a time just a few weeks ago, maybe whenever they got swept at Georgia, and that's the series that Josenberger got hurt, and at that point I said, I don't know if they're going to host a regional. Like they could
Yeah.
easily, the wheels could easily fall off here, and they could end up being a 2 seed somewhere. And all they've done since then is win 8 of 9 SEC games. It's been
Yeah.
unbelievable, and now they're in prime position. I think they've already locked up a top 8 national seed, even
Yeah.
if they get swept at Vanderbilt and go
I
0-2
do
in
too.
Hoover. But it's unbelievable what they've done. I mean, it's truly remarkable. They've won 19 SEC games with 1 weekend to go. It's just crazy to see what they've done, despite having, not this past weekend because Josenberger did come back, but the weekend before you had Josenberger, Jared Wagner, and Stovall all out with injuries, and those are the guys
Hmm.
that have been batting 1, 2, and 3 in your lineup, and they still
Yeah.
swept Mississippi State. It's crazy.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think Arkansas could get swept this weekend and still be a national seed. I did a regional projections, and you can see who I've got Arkansas paired with. Shameless plug for our other videos. But anyway, spoiler alert, I did have Arkansas as the number 2 overall national seed. It's to the point in the season where it kind of doesn't matter how badly it goes for Arkansas the rest of the regular season and in Hoover. And I'm not suggesting it is, but I'm just saying that they've locked in so much that I think you're right on that.
Yeah, I mean they're a top 10 RPI team. I think what are they, number 4 or something like that in the RPI right now.
Yeah.
And you're not going to fall much even if you get swept at Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt's also a top 10
Yeah.
RPI team, and whoever they play in Hoover is going to be a
Yeah.
relatively high RPI. So it's not like you're going to suffer a loss to a SWAC team or something like that that's going to just plummet your RPI.
I think the SEC has only got one sub 50 RPI team at this point, and that's your defending national champ.
That's crazy. That's absolutely
It
crazy.
is. Yeah. And just for you and I kind of like our stats, our computers. I think they're a good way in my mind to pick up on things that maybe eliminate bias or give you a good big picture look. And there's 4 computers that I like in college baseball outside the RPI. And Warren Nolan's ELO, which is kind of based on the chess system of who you beat, and when you beat a team, you get to take points. You can find this out there on the internet. I'm not going to sit and explain it all, but that's one ranking. He's got Arkansas 4. Kenneth Massey, I think uses margin of victory and strength of schedule, got him 4. Kislanko's Isov, which I think is maybe more like RPI based on results. I could be wrong about that, but when I scroll through it, that's the impression I get. He's got him at 7, and Boyd's World's Icer, which has been around forever. And he hasn't been updating lately until he just did one this week. He's got Arkansas 5 or 6, excuse me. So, and that was as of a couple of days ago. I don't know if midweek results changed anything, but point being, by every objective measure, this is a national seed quality team, however you slice it.
Yeah, that's good news for Arkansas too, because they've been really, really, really good in Fayetteville. I think they're 13-2 at home in SEC play. I think 30-4, 31-4, something. It really reminds me of the 2018 team that was oh so close to winning it all. They were just absolutely dominant at home. 14-1 in SEC play that year, and this year 13-2. So it's it's going to be uh, really good news for Arkansas if they're playing at home, in my opinion. Like they've struggled a little bit on the road. I mean, they did sweep Mississippi State. You can question whether or not that means anything, but then again, they just beat LSU this past weekend. So, yeah, I think playing at home, being a national seed, should give them a little bit of an easier path. Maybe more so than other teams to Omaha.
Yeah, playing at home in Arkansas, hardly the only team to do that. You see some teams with some wild road home splits, and Arkansas has been average. Wouldn't do it justice, but the record is kind of average on the road. And again, let's consider where they go to play. But here's what I'm getting to. I think South Carolina is a good team wherever. Certainly better at Founders Park. But these guys, and Carolina's been another team that's banged up. Didn't have Noah Hall, didn't have Will Sanders, I don't think made the trip. But the problem for them, and I know they've had some bats out too, but they haven't been without Gavin Cassis. They haven't been without Ethan Petrie. I mean, they've still got dudes even when they're hurt. Arkansas this weekend wins games 4-1, 5-1, and then loses 3-1. Throws 5 guys, which is unbelievable against that lineup. And again, these are guys that, and you could say Founders Park may play a little home run friendly at time. I guess that's the case. I haven't done a deep dive into the park analytics, but let's just say for the sake of this, although Arkansas, 320 to right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, ball can get out of there too. Holding that lineup down the way it did with 5 guys was, I don't know, that was something I had on the bingo card coming into the weekend.
No, and honestly, I don't think Dave Van Horn did either, especially for game 3, because he told us after game 2 when they lost, he's like, this is game 3. Both teams can, they score runs by hitting the ball out of the ballpark. The wind is supposed to shift. He said it could get crazy tomorrow, and it was 5-1. I mean, it was nothing like the 14-13, whatever that was down in Baton Rouge. So it was a little bit of a surprise. They knew that Hunter Hollan had thrown well the previous week, even though he only went like 3 2/3 against Mississippi State. They could tell that his stuff was there, just not quite there in terms of location and command and things like that. And even said after that series, I asked about him, and he said, he was very good, but next week we think his command is going to be there. And boy, that proved to be prophetic, because he went 9 innings. I think he threw 113 pitches and 80 of them were strikes. It was like 70%. Just it was crazy how well he pitched the other day. So yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, because I expected there to be a little bit more fireworks. I don't think either team homered the first 2 games, and then I think both teams only hit 1 in game 3. So not quite what you would expect in an Arkansas South Carolina series, maybe coming into it.
What were the temperatures for the games there?
They were warm, but the first 2 games.
Interesting.
Yeah, the first 2 days though, the ball just wasn't flying. It wasn't quite what you would usually expect. I think maybe the wind was blowing in a little bit, like not a ton, but the ball just wasn't flying. There were several times where contact was made, and like, oh, maybe that's got a chance, and it was caught, in front of the warning track. So it was a little bit of a weird weekend. But yeah, still, I think the pitching had a lot to do with it. I mean, honestly, I was impressed by South Carolina's pitching staff, despite being down a couple of guys. I thought they pitched, really well. Their game 2 starter, whose name is just absolutely drawing a blank right now, was really, really good. 7 scoreless. I thought he was very special.
Well, if you want to do a good exercise, which I think is a pretty good precursor to postseason success. Now, look, it doesn't always happen this way. There's always going to be surprises. And Tennessee had this in spades a year ago, and it didn't work out. And that's, how far do you have to stretch guys to competently cover 27 innings in a weekend? And how does that look? In other words, are you covering them with dudes who can shut you down? Are you covering them with 1 or 2 dudes that can shut you down, and 4 or 5 other guys, or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 in LSU's case, maybe that it might go well, or it might not go well at all. That's pitching in college baseball these days. That's pitching in the SEC right now. Arkansas did it with 5 guys last weekend. And I think as you're circling, as you're going forward, the Kevin Kopps team, as great as that team was, Hutch, and I think the offense on that team was probably, I liked it better than this team, so it's not apples to apples. But I just kept watching them every weekend. It was remarkable, because they would throw him an unbelievable amount of pitches on Friday. They'd get in a spot on Sunday, and they would go to him, and he'd throw, I don't know, it seemed like he'd throw 60 to 80 pitches in a couple outings. And you're just like, we never seen this. Is this guy the bionic man, or can it be something you can work going forward? And you're just like, it's one of the two. And you know how that ended. A great season, but it just finally it ran its course. I think that's why I'm so optimistic about them in postseason, Hutch, because they I mean, when you're looking at the SEC as it stands right now, and look, this could change. But when you're having that discussion of how comfortable do you feel covering 27 innings, it is Arkansas up here, and maybe Tennessee too, and then maybe everybody else with the injuries. Now, there's some teams I think South Carolina, Vandy could certainly work themselves back into that discussion, and maybe even up there with Arkansas, but it's not where we are right now. That's a very long-winded way of saying I feel really good about where they sit going in the postseason, and I think they could potentially get as far as they need to get with that pitching situation.
I mean, especially when you throw in the fact that Brady Tygart, a guy that was
Yeah.
a preseason All-American, your closer, he misses 2 months with a UCL strain. He's moved into the starting rotation the last 3 weekends, and he's thrown 1 inning, 2 innings, 3 innings. He's only allowed 1 hit over those 6 innings, no runs. He's slowly starting to work his way back. I mean, he threw 37 pitches in 3 innings this past weekend. You could easily stretch him to be, get 6 innings at least, out of him, and boom, you got an extra 3 innings right there that they didn't even use.
Yeah.
You didn't use Cody Adcock this past weekend, and he seems to have pitched really, really well of late. Zach Morris is a guy that you look at his overall stats that they look terrible, but he's a guy that's pitched for you in big spots. Last year in the College World Series, really good last year. He's pitched better of late. He's a guy that you can maybe count on. They've got a couple of freshmen that are very up and down, like you expect freshmen to be. If they could, get into a groove here for the postseason, I mean, they've got plenty of arms. I think they could easily cover, the 27 innings on a weekend, or 36 in a regional, or even 45. Depending on how many games you got to go. I mean, they've got enough arms, in my opinion, to get it done. Especially if the bats can kind of get back to where they were a little bit earlier in the season. They've got all the pieces to make a deep run, in my opinion.
I'm going to play a little scenario, kind of a worst case scenario here. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just thinking out loud. You saw Mississippi State a couple years ago. I didn't think after their first 2 guys that was a phenomenal pitching staff, but what they had was like 14 or 15 guys that they would throw in Omaha. And the luxury you have with that is if it's not going well with one of them, you just flip the page to the next guy and try that. And if you got a good mix of lefty righty, you can play that game a long way. And State played it to a national title. Let's say something goes wrong. Let's say somebody gets bombed, somebody gets hurt. You're out of that. Maybe, I don't know, where they had probably 6 key guys. I would say, as I look at it, the 5 that threw last weekend. And the other one you just mentioned, whose name escapes me. But anyway, it's been basically those 6 guys as I watch it. You mentioned Morris and some other guys, some freshmen. If things go really poorly for them, because that's kind of what happens in baseball these days, is nobody's arms stay healthy. Can they, Mississippi State, piece it together with the guy here and there with another 4 or 5 guys that we don't usually see on weekends?
They have the talent to do that, in my opinion. It's just a matter of, are they going to – oh, am I good? Yeah, so I think they've got –
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay, good. Yeah, they've got the talent to do that for sure. I mean, you've got – the 2 freshmen that I mentioned, or actually I guess there's 3. I mean, you've got a couple of righties and Ben Bybee and Christian Fouch. And Fouch is a guy that if you'd asked me 3 weeks ago, that I would have said, man, he's going to be a dude. I mean, he's 6'5", something like that, throws mid-90s, got just an awesome splitter. Just he's got the stuff to be a guy that could be a key bullpen arm, give you an inning or here or there. But unfortunately, in Game 3 of the Georgia series, he gives up, I think, a couple of singles and a walk in the 9th inning, loads the bases. He comes out. Another freshman, Ben Bybee, who I think is going to be good down the line, comes in, gives up a grand slam to tie the game, and then gives up a walk-off bomb. You've also got Parker Coyle. He's a left-hander. He had not pitched in an SEC game until a couple of weeks ago. I believe it was against A&M. He comes in and gets the save, like a 2-inning save. So they've got those three guys. You've got Zach Morris that if he's on, he's a guy that can give you a few innings. Austin Ledbetter, he's a guy that's really struggled this year. They thought was going to kind of take a step. He was okay as a freshman last year, has really struggled for most of the year. But his last time out, pitching in a midweek game against Lipscomb, he gives them 4 scoreless out of the bullpen. So maybe he's the guy that you can count on for a few innings here and there. So they've got guys. It's just a matter of which ones of them are going to be pitching well that particular day.
Yeah, Bobby, I didn't realize it pitched as much in the SEC as he had. I remember him throwing a little bit against A&M. That was the last time he's thrown a league play, and I thought getting through last weekend without using Cody Adcock, which was the name I blanked on a minute ago, was again not something I would have expected coming into last weekend. But here we are. All right, let's flip the page to Nashville, where I am. I will be in the ballpark for the Saturday game. I will not on Thursday. My son's got a baseball game, and I got Billy Joel on Friday night, which would be fun. Christmas present to me. So anyway, I'll be following those from afar those 2 nights, and then in the press box for Saturday. Huge series coming up for both teams. The other side of the coin is where you have the questions, because I think Vanderbilt, if Vanderbilt's healthy, that rotation of Holton, Owen, and Futrell is best in the league. Vanderbilt's not healthy. I think they've already said that Holton will not pitch this weekend. When he has pitched well, it's not gone well. I think he's not been pitching at 100%, which has maybe caused him some mechanical issues. And I hear it's iffy whether he pitches the rest of the year. I think he will, but it's not certain. Owen, I think they're calling 50-50 for this weekend. He's probably their most talented guy. He didn't pitch last weekend in Gainesville. They could have really used him there. Devin Futrell is a guy that I think matches up pretty well with Arkansas. He's a fly ball pitcher. When you face a gorilla ball team, you will see some balls get out of the yard on him. That's not really the case with Arkansas. It does things other ways. I'm not saying Arkansas can't beat him. I'm just saying that might be the one that if you're looking at from an Arkansas standpoint, you're concerned about. How Vandy covers those other innings, I'm not entirely sure. Tim Corbin did something on Wednesday or Tuesday I've never seen him do. They will play through anything short of a tornado, as long as they're not standing water on the field. They preemptively canceled a midweek game late in the afternoon with Middle Tennessee State on Tuesday because of the threat of inclement weather. And I sent you the text. I looked down at. They had a little thunderstorm that might not breeze through around the start of game time. They rained it out, and here we are. That kind of tells you where Vandy is with pitching. By the way, I don't say that judgmentally. I would have done that too. You're seeing teams occasionally cancel games because of threats to the RPI. You saw A&M do that a year ago. MTSU is, I think, around 150. So that's a game, even if they are healthy pitching-wise, probably doesn't help your RPI if you win it. So was it unusual circumstances for what they normally do? Yes. Was it something I can defend? Yeah, because you got to look out for your team. But anyway, that kind of underscores where the place Vanderbilt is pitching-wise. Nick Maldonado, the closer, has been a guy that has started in the past. He has been a multi-inning reliever that can go 3 from the 7th on to finish a game. They've been using him very sparingly for 10 or 12 pitches. I don't know what that's been about. But anyway, it is not a good pitching situation for Vandy coming into the weekend. And I think if Hunter Owen doesn't start, and even if he does start, you don't know how effective it's going to be, although he's been pretty good when he's thrown. I think the pitching, and again, apologize for the long-windedness of the preamble here, but it could be potentially really dicey for Vandy coming into the weekend.
Well, that's really good news for Arkansas because they, as I said earlier, the offense has not quite been there like we have. And Dave Van Horn said that after the game 3 that he thinks his guys are a little bit tired, this point of the season.
Yeah.
He said he locked the batting cages on Monday. He didn't want anybody swinging a bat, with the exception of Jared Wagner, their starting left fielder, who's been out the last several weeks with a broken thumb. He just got some pins removed from his hand. I've heard that he's he's swung the bat a little bit, hit off a tee. I think he was supposed to take batting practice on Tuesday with the team. It sounds like he's trending in the right direction. So I mean, getting him back would be huge. Josenberger just returned last weekend. Now that he's got a series under his belt, maybe he's better this weekend. And you're replacing some not so great hitters in the lineup. And so I think that bodes well for Arkansas, especially with, you throw in the fact that Arkansas's pitching staff is kind of coming together. If they can just get it all to click at the same time, I feel like that's always kind of the key. Then they're going to be really tough to beat, especially if it's a pitching staff that's dealing with injuries, which I'm sure, Dave Van Horn can definitely relate to and kind of feel for Corbin with that, because it's no fun. And to have it happen when it's happening for Vandy just makes it even tougher, with this being the last weekend of the regular season.
Yeah, well, I doubt Arkansas feels too sorry for Vandy given what it's gone through this weekend. But you would love to see these two teams meet at full strength. I know that's a series you and I both circled. And man, this not that this won't be fun, but man, if you have Jax Wiggins and Carter Holton and Hunter Owen out there, and Vandy's been out without its midweek starter almost all year. A kid named Andrew Dukanich, who would have been a first rounder if he'd wanted to take the money a year ago. They thought he was probably the fourth best pitcher on the staff coming in. He pulled a hamstring, I want to say early March, has not pitched since. It just every time he throws, he re-aggravates it. And so he won't be available. That hurts you in the midweek because then you're throwing other guys that you could use for weekends. And so their banged upness goes beyond just those two dudes. But I'm looking the weather this weekend. 50% chance of rain on Thursday, according to the weather app. Friday looks like clear. Saturday, 60% chance of rain. So you could see a game rained out. Here's the thing. I think if you're each team, like if you're Vandy and Arkansas, you split 1-1 and get a game rained out. I don't think anybody is leaving that ballpark going, we got cheated, because everybody gets what they want under that circumstance.
Exactly. I think that would honestly, if you're Arkansas, you would like that. Although Dave did say that they've, because they only used 5 guys this past weekend, he said there's some guys that they would like to get on the mound. Now, maybe he wasn't talking about for Vanderbilt. Maybe he was talking about for Hoover, because I think everyone knows, David Horn, he's not going to go out of his way to try to win that thing. He's won it once, and it was 21, and we all know how that season ended. Didn't make it to Omaha despite being number 1 team in the country. So maybe it's they use those guys then, and and honestly, if you only play 2 games, you don't have to use one of your starters. You can give somebody an extra day off and throw them game 1 in Hoover. So yeah, if they only play, if rain impacted the series so much that you missed an entire game, I don't think Dave Van Horn would shed a tear, to say the least.
Yeah, let's see. They're 19-8. 1-1 would put them at 20-9. LSU at that point is also missing a game. It would have to sweep. Who's LSU got this weekend? It's got Georgia and Athens, where Georgia's not been easy. Georgia's
Arkansas
made some good teams look silly in Athens. Oh,
yeah.
Forgot about that. That would be one example.
Yes.
Yeah, so you get what I'm saying here. So I mean, that under that case, like in a tiebreaker, let's see, in that series when they played, that went to who?
LSU won the
LSU
series down in Baton Rouge. Yeah.
Okay, so it gets, if it's 1-1 here, LSU sweeps at Athens, which that's best case scenario. Then the tiebreaker goes to LSU. You've also got Florida, which is 18-9. Florida's got at Kentucky this weekend. That won't be easy either. So Florida would have to. Well, let's see. If Florida wins 2 of 3, then it's 20-10. So Arkansas gets the tiebreak by virtue of 1 fewer loss. So Arkansas really in pretty good position. I would have to say the odds-on favorite to take the league at this point, given all the scenarios. And surely what will happen is one we didn't outline.
Yeah, it's it shapes up well for Arkansas, which worries me as somebody who's covered Arkansas for 10 plus years now. Generally, when things are looking really good, then that's when the worst thing happens. But there's just something about this team. There's just something about this team. Everything they've overcome with the injuries. If they can win 2 of 3 at Vanderbilt this weekend, I think that would be spectacular. Or in the scenario you just laid out, if they
Yeah.
have split 2 games, if one game gets rained out, I think that would be pretty good for Arkansas.
Well, and you mentioned that. I have thought of that too. We're sitting here throwing dirt on Vanderbilt, which I mean, look, and that's a team that's built on pitching and stud pitching at the top, and that has just been gutted from this team with those guys out. But I mean, this is a team that hit really well early in the year. It's just not been swinging at the last few weekends. At some point, Vanderbilt's going to hit better than it's hit, just because I don't think it's not as good as it was the first 6 series of the year when they were leading the league in runs scored in league play. But I don't think it's as bad as if they score 4 runs in a game these days in league play, you feel like it's been a phenomenal afternoon. Now, the truth is maybe somewhere in between, and that might be the thing to watch too.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a great matchup. I mean, that they do have a good offense at Vanderbilt. I think they do swing the bat well. I mean, as you said, I mean, I think what did they open the year against Mississippi State or second weekend or something like that and put up just insane numbers.
They went. Let's see. They went Ole Miss at home, and then at Mississippi State. Yeah, they scored
That's
a
what I thought.
ton of
Yeah,
runs in
that's
those 2 weekends. So
so that kind of inflated the numbers a little bit.
yeah,
But as you said, they're not going to be as bad as they have been the last week or so. I mean, they're going to get it going, but it's going to be tough against Arkansas's pitching if they're going to be pitching as well as they did, this past week. And especially, I mean, we talk about how good Arkansas's pitching was, and Hagen Smith, he's sitting here with like a 2.47, ERA, for the
yeah,
year, and I don't know if he's completely pitched as well as he can. That's the crazy
yeah.
thing about him is like there's been things that have happened like an inning here or there. We're like, oh well, maybe he could have done better there, and then you sit back and you're like, wow, here he went 5 innings, giving up 1 run, or went 5 scoreless, and he's got an ERA under 2.5. So if he can fully put it together, then that's going to be a scary pitching rotation, especially if Tygart can get stretched out where he can go
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 innings. That suddenly becomes maybe one of the more talented, starting rotations in the SEC and maybe in the country as well.
And before I let you go, that's one of the things I like about them is they got dudes who they can use in different spots. Tygart has closed before, he started. You've seen McEntire start and give them 6 at times. I want to say he threw really well at North Carolina last year from memory in that regional. I feel like, and this year sometimes it's gone well, sometimes it's not. He's doing long relief now. And he's just kind of a different look. He's not a 97 power guy, but he's, I think, a little bit more of a pitch to contact guy. They got parts that they can use in different spots, guys that are comfortable and have succeeded in relief, guys that are comfortable and have succeeded in starting. They've succeeded for long stints. They've succeeded for short stints. I just like a pitching staff where not only the parts good, they're versatile. And I think that's another thing that Dave Van Horn has got in his arsenal as we hit the postseason.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Hunter Hollan is the only guy that started every weekend this year. And he started the year as the game 3 starter, then moved into game 1 starter in SEC play. Now he's back to game 3. You've got, Hagen Smith has been a game 1 starter. Then he was the closer. Then he was the game 1 starter again. McEntire, he's been kind of like a piggybacking guy off of Tygart. Cody Adcock is the guy that has started. I mean, he threw 6 scoreless innings against Auburn, first weekend of SEC play. And he's also been a guy that can maybe long relieve for you. He could also be a guy that comes in and gives you, he's been a bridge guy, a 1-inning guy to get you to your closer. They really do have a lot of flexibility in this, pitching staff, guys that aren't really 100% set in stone. And that's one reason I think, Matt Hobbs has done, the pitching coach here at Arkansas, has done a tremendous job kind of navigating all of these injuries, because that's what's really forced all this stuff to happen. Ideally, Jackson Wiggins is healthy, for the whole season, and he's one of your Friday night guy, and you can just keep him there. And ideally, Cody Frank is a guy that's healthy all year, and he's a key long reliever. And Dylan Carter, hopefully he could stay healthy and be a guy. But those guys are out, and they've still made do, and just went through a weekend holding a powerful South Carolina lineup like they did. It was you got to give Matt Hobbs a ton of credit for that.
Carter, is he done for the year, or do they get him back?
Tommy John.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. All right, Hutch. Yeah. That's Arkansas fans. Sometimes they wonder why I blank on a name or stuff. It's like the parts are all over the place. Some weekends you have this guy, some weekends you don't. Some weekends he's pitching on Friday, some weekends he's pitching on Sunday in relief. And it just, if you don't keep it all in front of you, it gets a little hard to track. But that's why we've got you, and we appreciate you. You're great at what you do. You're a good friend, good dude. Tell folks how they can find your stuff. I presume if they're watching this, they already know, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah, everything I write goes up on bestofarkansassports.com. We're a free site, no paywall, nothing like that. So you get all that for free. You can also follow me on Twitter at NWA Hutch. You can get all my stuff there. I'm always, posting live updates from baseball games and news from across the beat, football, basketball, everything. But right now we're pretty heavy duty baseball right now because of, we're coming up on the postseason, and Arkansas is playing really, really well, up to number 2 in the polls. So you can find all that stuff there on bestofarkansassports.com and on Twitter at NWA Hutch.
Hey, Hutch, thanks a bunch. We'll catch up with you as the Hogs hit the postseason.
No problem. Anytime.